Okay, notice what this point that we're going to is called? Joseph. Joseph. Yusuf. Joseph in Arabic. Joseph vantage point.
All right.
Here, let's not get our feet all muddy.
Good idea. Man, bro, that's incredible.
So remember when we were standing down at Shechem, I was showing you that Israeli tower, military tower up on Mount Gerizim.
Yeah.
That's where we are now. It's just right around the corner here.
Oh.
So I'm going to have Tim walk around the corner first. And, these are Israeli soldiers.
So this is the one with the blessing.
This is the Mount of Blessing. Har Bracha. We're going to go down here and discuss it all. But if you're an Israeli Jew, this is as close as you can get to the sites that we went to today.
Oh.
Okay, so let's look out and let's talk about this. So you can see Jordan. Jordan is that far plateau ridge in the background. That's where the King's Highway goes along. Okay, and so Abraham came down from Haran, and he crossed the Jordan River at a place called Adam. And you can see Tel Adam from the other side. The Jordan side is one place we stop and look at Tel Adam, and then the military comes and kicks us out. But anyways, he crossed at Adam, and then he came up this valley right here called Valley Farah. You see it coming in from the north.
Right.
And so Abram, crossed the river, and he came up here to Shechem, which is straight down below us. You see the ruins where we were?
Yeah.
And that's the first place that Abram is mentioned, Genesis 12. And that's where God first appeared to him in the land and said, to your offspring, I will give this land. Remember, the one word for Shechem is covenant. And so Abraham is there, and then later Jacob goes back to Haran, and he gets his wives and his family started there, and then they come back, and he comes the same way. In fact, we know the way that Abraham came from the details that were given by Jacob about Jacob's path. He comes across the Jordan River at Adam. He comes up the Wadi Farah here, and he comes to Shechem, and where his grandfather built an altar, he also builds an altar to Yahweh. Then, of course, they end up down in Egypt. But as they're down in Egypt, Joseph says, one day you're going to come back to the land, and I want you to take my bones with you and bury them in the promised land. And so they came back up and with Joshua and the Israelites, and they came here to renew the covenant, and they buried his bones. And if you look at these signs, that's Jews come to this place to look down on their history here. Okay, they aren't allowed to go to the places that we went to. They look from this vantage point. So if you look to Shechem and you go to the right, you're going to see a funky colored, it looks like a tennis court almost, with pink around it. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so point to that tennis court and then go just to the left, and there's a road going through there.
Yeah.
Come back down that road towards us and look to the right just below that tennis court thing, and you're going to see a small white dome.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the burial place of Joseph.
Okay. All right.
So go to the tennis courts thing, go to the street, come down the street, and it kind of disappears. See how the street disappears for a little while between those buildings? right where it emerges from disappearing, go to the right there, and there's a little white dome there. Tomb of Joseph. Everybody see it?
See it?
Okay, so then the covenant is renewed under Joshua. So 6 of the tribes are over on our side, and we're shouting from Har Bracha, the blessings, if the Israelites keep the covenant. And then that is Mount Ebal. And so cover that with the 6 tribes, and they are shouting back the curses. One of the curses, by the way, if they break the covenant, is that their cities will become tells. They will become heaps of ruins. You see this bird over here to our left?
Yeah.
See how it's hovering?
Uh-huh.
That's one of Isaiah's pictures that God will do that over Jerusalem.
Huh.
He will hover like that, like a bird over Jerusalem,
Well.
protect it. Okay, so the covenant is renewed, and remember that Joshua sets up a pillar, a standing stone, to be a witness of that, and you can see it even from up here. Look at where the fortress temple is, and then right in front of it you can see the stone. You see it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that's the witness of the renewal of the covenant at the time of Joshua. Later, the people seem to have worshipped it as Lord of the covenant, and the temple, the fortress temple that you see down there. You remember our one thing? One thing per site that the Bible talks about, and that's found in archaeology. So make that a mound before it was excavated, and the Bible told us that there was a fortress temple there. Then they go excavate, and look what stands out like a sore thumb from the ruins down there, a fortress temple. And so that's the pillar where they went to make Abimelech king, but eventually Abimelech, the people turned on him, he turned on them. They went into the fortress temple, and he went and gathered wood with his men, and they put it up against that fortress temple and burned it, and over 1,000 people died. So that's the Judges period. And then remember Rehoboam then comes down here in his chariot to be anointed king. He comes down here, they say, hey, your father's yoke is heavy, lighten our yoke, we'll serve you. He goes, discusses it with the young men and the old men. He takes the young men's advice. He comes back after 3 days. He says, my father made your yoke heavy, I'm going to make it heavier. And so the people say, the heck with you, we're going to form our own kingdom. That's the divided kingdom begins then. Jeroboam's the first king that reigns from Shechem down there. Then later the capital moves to Tirzah, which is up that canyon to the north, Wadi Farah. And for a short time it's up at Tirzah, and then it moves down to our left in between Ebal and Gerizim. If you go down there, then you come to Samaria, which is the final capital of the northern kingdom. So the kingdom divides here. And then, of course, Jesus, usually they walk on the other side of the Jordan River at the base of that far plateau, down to Bethany beyond the Jordan, cross at opposite Jericho, and then up to Jerusalem. But Jesus is coming back to Galilee through here. He's been going for a day and a half from Jerusalem to here, and he stops for a drink in the well of his ancestor Jacob. And so you can see the church straight down below us where we first stopped. Everybody see it?
With the red dome.
With the red dome. And then if you look at the ruins of Shechem and go up from there, you'll see a green dome with the minaret sticking up on the side of the hill, up high on the side of the hill. That's where Sitkar is.
Oh, that one over there.
So she walked from there up on the side of that hill all the way to the well to get her water. She was there when Jesus stopped. He asked her for water, and they had this profound conversation at the well where Jesus reveals that he is the Messiah that she's been expecting. Now the Samaritans are up here. We just drove through their town, and to this day, one of the Torahs that is used for textual criticism, meaning to compare the different ancient accounts to determine the original. One of them is the Samaritan Pentateuch. Okay, and so they have their own paper trail for the Torah, written in the script like you saw, which is pretty amazing. You know that script up here, which is this ancient script? In the Dead Sea Scrolls, a lot of times, the 4 letters for Yahweh will be in this script. So the rest of it is in the square script, but then when it says Yahweh, it's written those 4 letters, Yod He, Waw He, are written in this more old ancient script. So anyways, we have the Samaritans still living here, the remnant that came out of Samaria that we just were. So we have Abraham, we have Jacob, we have Dinah, we have Joseph's bones down there, we have Joshua, we have Rehoboam and Jeroboam and the divided kingdom, and we have Abimelech, and we have Jesus. All that history in your Bibles you can see from right here, and this is as close as Israeli Jews could get. We have a great privilege to be able to go to these biblical sites and actually visit them, although hardly anybody does. Okay, now if you look down here, you're going to see, do you see all the buildings spread out and everything? And then all of a sudden you see them all crunched together. You see them down there, all condensed? That's a refugee camp. This is Palestinian refugees living in the midst of Palestinians. So in 1948, those Palestinians used to live in land that they then ran out of, fled from in 1948, and they've been living there ever since. Doesn't leave a lot of hope for the Syrian refugees when the Palestinians from 1948 are still living in refugee camps. Okay, now what I want you to think about is look at that refugee camp down there. By the way, a lot of the terrorist acts come out of refugee camps, as you can imagine, because life is pretty rough in there. I want you to look at that refugee camp. That is what you find when you dig down on the Western Hill in Jerusalem and you come down to that Assyrian level. You find a bunch of houses all smashed together because it's a refugee camp on the Western Hill from the 10 tribes that are fleeing to the south and occupying that hill for the first time. And that is what then Hezekiah builds his wall around to protect those refugees. And that's the picture that we get from Micah, that God's going to gather all of his tribes like sheep in a pen down to Jerusalem. And you get a good lay of the land. If you go, you can see the crossroad. You see the crossroad here that Shechem is on? Okay, if you go down this way, not all that far, you get to the Mediterranean. You're not too far away from Caesarea when you get down to the Mediterranean from here. And then look, if you go that way, look how close you are to dropping down into the Jordan Valley and then Jordan beyond. Shows you how narrow Israel is today. Now, not nearly, it's way more narrow than it was in ancient times, because in ancient times, what you're looking at in that far plateau is also Israel. Because you have the eastern tribes, Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh on the east side of the river, all the way up into the Golan Heights, and all the way down to the Arnon Gorge that comes into the Dead Sea. Okay, take some pictures and then we're going to make a run for Shiloh.
Hey Joe,
Yeah.
I see you in building down here.
Yes. Yeah, right here. Yes. Out of the car like this.
Wow.
And, well, because I had to go talk to them. So they had me raise my shirt and go around like that. And so I walked up to the soldiers. They all got their machine guns on me. And they had it blocked. They had it closed so that we couldn't get out. So I said, no, you got to let us out. You can't just leave us in here. There's no hotels. So I remember the Israeli soldier standing there with a machine gun, and he said to me, well, where were you? And I said, we were at Shechem. And he goes like this, he goes, oh, I've always wanted to go to Shechem.
Oh, no.
And I said to him, you can. You've got a machine gun.